Rent is a boring loser who's been a low-grade adventurer his entire life, but one day, he runs into a huge dragon and suddenly gets turned into an undead, which allows him to become even stronger than he was as a human. A man wakes up in front of a lake and shockingly realizes he's been turned into a skeleton. An adventurer. Rent Faina remarks that the day starts early for adventurers and most poor people, and gets dressed before heading out. At the Adventurers Guild, he checks the job board for a good quest but finds nothing useful, so he decides to just explore the labyrinth of the moon's reflection. Inside the labyrinth, Rent walks through the tunnels until he unexpectedly sees a huge hole in one of the walls, which is rare for labyrinths. He goes through it and enters an unfamiliar area before a gigantic dragon suddenly appears in front of him, and Rent remarks that he knows he stands no chance against it. When Rent opens his eyes again, he finds himself lying next to a lake and shockingly realizes that he's become an undead skeleton. He thinks about going back to the city, but knows that would only cause panic, so he decides to wait for some solo adventurers to come by, only to remember that skeletons can't talk. While wandering through the tunnels, another skeleton sees him and charges forward. Rent remarks that he can hardly lift his sword in this body, but he uses his spirit energy to defeat the enemy. After the fight, he unexpectedly feels the energy he spent coming back to him. He remembers learning about existential evolution, and realizes he might be able to evolve into a stronger form, maybe a ghoul. Meanwhile, his friend Lorraine in the city wonders why he hasn't visited her lately. Wanting to become stronger, Rent starts hunting more skeletons to gain power. A while later, he spots a slime and decides to fight it. He aims for its core and surprisingly manages to instantly kill it, so he collects the leftover slime material to sell later. Back at the guild, a receptionist asks Sheila where the newbie is, so says she told her about the labyrinth of the moon's reflection since Rent hasn't been back since yesterday. Meanwhile, Rent discovers that his spirit energy, mana, and divine power are still the same even after turning undead. He continues fighting skeletons and slimes until he finally evolves into a ghoul and sees that he has flesh and muscle now. He remarks that he might be able to evolve into a vampire that practically looks human and tries to speak but realize he'll have to practice a bit. Rent takes out a group of goblins and remarks that he might be even stronger than he was as a human. Later, he watches an adventurer fighting a skeleton from afar, but when another skeleton appears, she gets cornered, so he steps in and defeats them both. After that, he drops his weapon to show he doesn't want to fight, so the girl watches carefully and slowly realizes he must be an adventurer like her. She nervously asks if she can leave, so Rent drops some money in front of her and asks if she can bring him some clothes to hide his body. She cautiously picks up the money, introduces herself as Rina Rupag, and says she will repay this debt as the daughter of a knight. That evening, Rina returns to town, tells Sheila she wants to talk to her about something that happened in the dungeon. Meanwhile, Rent keeps fighting monsters to become stronger. Later, Rina comes back with the clothes he asked for and reveals that she even got him a mask to hide his face. But when he puts it on, it unexpectedly sticks to his face and won't come off, so Rent realizes it's cursed. Rina says she should have figured that was the case since it was so cheap, and apologizes before they decide to return to Malt together. As they get closer to the main gate, Rent becomes worried that guards might recognize him from his ID, and will ask where the human Rent went, so they decide to use another gate to enter. At the gate, the guards stop them and check Rent's ID. They become suspicious about his strange mask, but Rina hurriedly makes up a story to explain it, so the guards let them through. Once inside, Rent quietly slips away so Rina won't get in trouble for helping him. That night, Rent goes to his scholar friend Lorraine's house and sees that the door opens, so he walks in and wakes her up. She gets up and is surprised to see that he's wearing a mask, so he shows her his rotten hand. Lorraine is wondering when Rent will return and pretends to be asleep when she hears him outside her house. When he wakes her, she's shocked to see that he's become a ghoul and lets him stay at her place in return for allowing her to study his new condition. The next morning, Rent helps around the house by cleaning while Lorraine goes out. When she comes back, she gives him the money he earned from selling the slime liquid. Later that day, Rent visits the blacksmith to get a new sword. He trades in his old one, and as he's talking to the receptionist, he mentions that he can use magic, spirit energy, and divinity, so the blacksmith's assistant tells him he'll have to come back a few more times before the weapon is finished. Meanwhile, Lorraine keeps researching to understand Rent's transformation. While studying, she remembers how they first met. In a flashback, Rent was still a rookie adventurer who joined her since she was going on a mission to collect herbs in the forest. When a monster attacked them, Rent quickly protected her and encouraged her to use a spell, after which she asked him to teach her about being an adventurer. Later, Rent visits the blacksmith again, and since his new sword isn't done yet, they give him a temporary one that only works with magic and spirit energy. As he's walking off, the assistant mutters that he seems to be in trouble and wonders why he doesn't come to them for help, questioning if they're that untrustworthy, but the blacksmith believes he doesn't want to cause them trouble, so they can make him tell the truth eventually. Later, Rent returns to the labyrinth of the moon's reflection and spots a man struggling against a slime, so he steps in to help defeat it, and the man gratefully thanks him. He explains that he's in debt and asks Rent to let him join. Rent is wary at first and says no, but he eventually agrees after the man begs several times. Rent leads him through the path where the dragon used to be and sees that it's gone now. They find through a narrow path and enter a mysterious room. Rent suddenly notices a glowing portal on the floor and warns the man to stay back, but the man can't see it and disappears on it, so Rent hurriedly goes after him and appears in front of a giant skeleton. Rent sees that they can't escape unless they defeat the boss and says divinity should work on it since it's undead. Once it's knocked down, he rushes forward and smashes its neck. Next, uses divinity to heal the injured man who was teleported with him. He says he can give him the magic stone he found, but asks him to run a few errands for him in town in exchange, so the man happily agrees. When they return to town, the man introduces Rent to his wife, who is stunned to see that he helped them. The man introduces himself as Loris and his wife as Isabel, so Rent thanks them both, and Loris asks if he can get his name. Rent asks if he can keep it a secret, so Loris says he'll refer to him as Mr. Rent gives him his name, so Loris smilingly tells him to come for a meal anytime he likes. Later, as Rent is walking back to Lorraine's house, he falls into a stupor and loses control of himself. He unexpectedly hugs Lorraine, taking her aback, and bites her shoulder, so she hurriedly pushes him away and uses a spell to knock him unconscious, saying he can apologize when he wakes up. Later, Rent wearily mutters that he can't remember what happened and hurriedly apologizes to Lorraine before using divinity to heal the marks he left on her shoulder. Lorraine examines him and realizes he has evolved from a ghoul into a ghast, and they realize his mask can change shape based on what he wants from it. Lorraine tells him that his strong wish to become human might be affecting how he existential evolves as well, and decides to run more tests to understand his condition better. Later, Rent goes to the blacksmith to return the temporary sword he borrowed, and even though the blacksmith, Clope isn't happy with how damaged it is. He accepts it after hearing about Rent's fight with the giant skeleton and decides to lend him another better sword since he's one of their best customers after all. As Rent is walking back, he sees Loris and Isabel buying goods to reopen their tavern. Lorraine makes a strong poison to test how Rent's body reacts, but when he drinks it, nothing happens. However, when she gives him healing potions and medicinal herbs, they hurt him instead of helping. Realizing his undead body reacts differently than a human's, she gives him a small bottle of her own blood and says he can use it to control his thirst whenever it becomes too strong. Rent decides to start working as an adventurer again, but knows he can't use his real name or show his true face, so Lorraine suggests that he register at the guild under a new name so no one will recognize him. When Rent arrives at the Adventurers Guild, he greets Sheila and fills out the registration form using the name Rent Vivi. When Sheila sees the name, she remembers Rent Faina and starts talking about him, so Rent calmly says he's one of Lorraine's relatives and is currently living with her. Later, while exploring the labyrinth, Rent sees two young adventurers fighting a goblin, so he leaves them to handle it and continues deeper, eventually reaching a portal. After stepping inside, he's teleported to a strange room where a skeleton rests on a bed, but before he can look around, a woman suddenly appears in the doorway. She asks who he is and assumes he's a thief, instantly attacking him with a spell that sends him crashing into a wall and burns off his coat. When she sees his body, she's surprised but quickly apologizes. She lends him her coat to cover himself and asks him to keep her location secret. However, before sending him away, she gives him an acacia map that automatically records all the places he visits and teleports him back to the labyrinth entrance. Later, Rent shows Lorraine the map's ability, surprising her, and when he later tries to revisit that area, he's surprised to see that the entrance has been blocked, so he heads back to Sheila and accepts a new quest to defeat 3 orcs. Rent finishes his mission to kill 3 orcs and returns to the guild to show proof to Sheila. Impressed by his performance, Sheila tells him that he now qualifies for the bronze class promotion exam, so he agrees to take it. Later, he visits Lorraine and she's surprised to hear that he registered under her family name, Vivi, so she annoyingly tells him off for not asking for permission first. Rent explains that he used her name to avoid attracting attention and to make his story about living with her more believable, since he can't reveal his true identity. During the bronze class exam, participants are allowed to choose between a written or oral test, and Rent notices the girl he saw earlier in the labyrinth. After finishing both parts of the exam, the adventurers are divided into teams and given a challenge to reach a specific location inside the New Moon Labyrinth, with the first group to arrive passing the test. Before entering the labyrinth, Rent's team decides to buy an updated map, realizing theirs is too old, and when they head in, they face a horde of skeletons and fight them off, so Rent quickly figures out that someone used monster essence to lure them there. As they're walking, Rent says there's an ambush ahead of them, but they swiftly defeat the adventurers and tie them up. Rent warns his part members, Rise and Laura, to keep their guard up since monsters aren't the only threat in the labyrinth, hearing which Rise says they'll follow his orders from now on. As they continue walking, Rent slowly tells someone to come pick them up. A hidden adventurer unties the men and is surprised to hear that Rent could tell they were sent by the guild. He mutters that there's only one person who's smart, enough to tell and believes his sister might have been right about him. Meanwhile, the guild leader meets Sheila and says Rent showed up out of nowhere, is quite skilled, and they don't know anything about his past. He says he's suspicious of him and tells Sheila to inform him if she learns anything about him. Deep inside the labyrinth, Rent and his party enter a large chamber, so he warns them that a boss monster is waiting ahead. When another group arrives, Rent allows them to fight first. Rise asks why he did that when this is a race, but Laura is sure he has a reason, and the injured adventurers hurriedly rush back out of the room. Rent says even if you lose, you don't die since guild employees save you, and they head in to face the boss. Rent and his party find a huge grand slime inside the room, so Rent remarks that he wanted the other adventurers to take care of it for them, but it's important to encounter challenges in life. Rise distracts the slime while Laura charges up her fire spell, and after she fires at it, Rise swiftly breaks the slime's core, so Rent reminds them to collect the slime's fluids, which can be sold later for some extra money. After defeating, the group continues exploring until they reach the goal point where they receive a completion badge that can be exchanged at the guild to earn their bronze class rank, as well as spell potions and potion holders for finishing the challenge successfully. After a short break, they return to the guild and trade their badges for their bronze class licenses, after which Rise and Laura thank Rent for helping them and say they hope to travel with him again someday. Later, Sheila meets Rent in private, telling him she feels something strange about him. She promises to keep whatever he reveals a secret, and even makes a magical contract to make sure she doesn't say anything. Rent is surprised to see this, and reveals that he's become undead because of an accident in the New Moon Labyrinth, but he decides to take her to Lorraine to explain more. Lorraine is shocked to learn that Rent shared his secret, but eventually agrees to trust. They sit down, and Sheila tells them that rumors are spreading in the guild about Rent's mysterious background and how quickly he's risen in rank, but she still vows to keep his secret and support him, so Rent decides to avoid the labyrinth for a while to stay out of trouble. Later, the guildmaster asks Sheila what happened to Rent Fina, since he was planning on recruiting him to the guild once he retired, so Sheila smilingly tells him the other Rent is a wonderful adventurer too. Rent stops by the blacksmith to collect his new sword and test it out with a few swings. He practices by channeling his different powers, and is curious about what will happen if he used all three at once, so he takes a spare sword and tries doing it, but the sword is instantly destroyed, shocking both him and the blacksmith. On his way home, Rent notices a guy asking an adventurer for help, but the man rudely declines, so Rent approaches him and asks what happened. The guy introduces himself as Reincarnated and explains that his village holds an annual festival where a girl is sacrificed to the Lord of the Lake. This year, his sister Amiris has been chosen, but he wants to save her. Rent takes Reincarnated to see Lorraine and explains the situation. After hearing everything, Rent agrees to go to the village, but when they arrive, Amiris hurriedly pulls Reincarnated inside and asks what an adventurer is doing here. She insists that she's fine with being this year's sacrifice, but Rent calmly explains that since Reincarnated hired him, only he can dismiss him. She reluctantly lets him stay, but warns him not to interfere with the ceremony. The next morning, Rent notices merchants giving sweets to children and pushing sales. When he approaches, they nervously tell him to leave before the River Lord gets angry, so Rent becomes suspicious of them, and later learns that these merchants appear every year during the festival. That night, the ceremony begins, and Amiris is taken to the lake, but Rent promises to Reincarnated that he'll protect her. When the Lord of the Lake appears, Rent walks on the water, and discovers that the Lord is actually a hidden ship used by the merchants to traffic people. He swiftly defeats all the merchants and rescues the kidnapped girls. Later, as Rent is about to head back to Malt, Amiris kisses him as thanks. After he returns home, Lorraine asks Rent if he stole the heart of another girl, so he admits he did get a thank you, but she'll probably forget about him since that's just how it is when you're an adventurer. Rent takes on a new job from the Adventurers Guild and asks Sheila about a rare item called the Dragon Blood Flower before heading out. He reaches an orphanage where a girl welcomes him and introduces him to the other kids. She then brings him to the head priestess, Lillian, and explains that she has a disease called malacumula, and the Dragon Blood Flower is the only thing that can cure her. so Rent promises to help her. However, before leaving, he decides to clean their basement for them. He unexpectedly finds a group of rats there, and as he's fighting them, a strange rat attacks and bites him, drinking some of his blood. Its fur suddenly changes color, and it seems to have formed a bond with him, so Rent goes to Lorraine for answers. She tells him that the rat's behavior is similar to an ability vampires have, and adds a drop of her blood in his dinner. The next morning, Rent heads out to find the dragon blood flower, and goes deep into the Tarrasque swamp, where he carefully crosses unstable wooden planks over the muddy water. Some goblins attack him as he's on the way, but he easily defeats them. As he continues, the planks suddenly collapse, and he falls into the swamp, so a huge fish monster attacks him, but he quickly kills it with his sword. Back in Malt, Lorraine tells Sheila that Rent dreams of becoming a mithril-class adventurer, and admits she doesn't really understand why he wants that. Meanwhile, in the swamp, Rent runs into a large armored monster and his sword barely hurts it, but the rat, Edel, jumps into its mouth and uses divine power to weaken it, before Rent finishes it off with a powerful blow. Rent crosses the lake and arrives at the area where the dragon blood flowers grow. As he starts collecting them, he sees a man in front of him, so they introduce themselves, and the man, Isaac, tells Rent that he needs a regular supply of dragon blood flowers and offers him a job to deliver them whenever possible, so Rent agrees. When he returns to the guild, Rent returns the borrowed magic bag and quietly asks Sheila to set up a meeting with a butcher. At the workshop, he pulls out the Tarrasque carcass he brought back earlier and later reflects how much he has changed, remarking that without his current powers, he would still be the weak adventurer he used to be. The next day, he goes back to the orphanage and gives Elise the dragon blood flowers, so she introduces him to the healer and herbalist, Umberto and Norman. Norman asks if he can use the leftovers, since there are a lot of other people who need this as well, so Rent puts a huge pouch of flowers in front of them and tells them they don't need to pay him, so they should just put it to good use. Later, Elise tells Rent she can't thank him enough since she was going to become an adventurer herself and take the job if nobody took the job. However, she says she still wants to be an adventurer like Rent who can help people. Edel returns to him, so Rent tells Elise Edel's old gang will protect her and the kids if any monsters disturb them. He adds that he'll lend her money whenever she wants to become an adventurer, and he's got a friend who can teach her magic as well. Later, Rent learns that he's been specifically requested by the Latour family for a job, so he believes it's connected to Isaac and accepts the request. At the orphanage, Umberto and Norman manage to cure Lillian with the medicine, and she realizes Rent was the one who helped them. Meanwhile, Rent reaches a mansion and is surprised to see a maze, so he asks for a map, but the guard explains that a magic item constantly changes the pathways and the person who gets through. The maze will receive a special reward from the Latour family. He asks for a hint, so the guard says the sun won't help him, after which Rent heads in, but eventually realizes he's totally lost. As Rent is walking around in the maze, he unexpectedly sees a girl drinking tea, and she smilingly invites him to join her, so he accepts. As he takes a seat, the girl says her teapot can recreate any kind of tea she wants and says it's worth around 300 platinum, surprising Rent, who remarks that you could live a lifetime off of just 1 platinum coin and have money left over. The woman says she's interested in Rent's magical mask and offers to buy it, but he politely declines. Before he leaves, she decides to give him some advice and says he shouldn't look directly at the sun while in the maze. As Rent continues through the maze, he starts noticing strange shifts in the sun's position. Realizing that the maze must involve some sort of teleportation magic, he concentrates on moving forward, and sometime later, he finally finds his way out and is greeted by the woman from before, Laura and Isaac. Laura takes Rent to a huge storeroom filled with magical artifacts as a reward for completing the maze. While exploring, he spots a mana-powered airship that looks fun, but he decides to continue searching for something useful. As he's looking, he accidentally touches a stack of items and activates a giant golem, so it starts attacking, and Isaac hurriedly defends himself. Laura hurriedly tries looking for a switch before Isaac finds and presses it, stopping the golem, after which they both apologize to Rent and tell him to continue examining the room. As he's looking, Rent unexpectedly finds a sealed bottle of vampire blood and chooses it as his reward. Later, he returns home and shows Lorraine both the mana-powered airship and the vampire blood he collected. Meanwhile, Isaac pours some blood into a teapot and tells a woman to get some rest. Rent tells Lorraine he knows something will change if he drinks it and admits he's scared, but he needs this if he's going to evolve. Lorraine says she wouldn't mind him being an undead forever, and says he could just stay here, but she knows he wants to become a mithril-class adventurer. She says she knows Rent has already decided and asks why he wants to become a mithril-class adventurer, so Rent decides to tell her the truth. When he was young, his parents often traveled to the city to buy supplies for their small village. One day, they took him and his friend Jinlin along. During the journey, Jinlin talked about wanting to become a strong adventurer so she could protect him someday. But as they were on their way, a huge wolf monster suddenly attacked their carriage and instantly killed Rent's parents. Rent and Jinlin desperately tried to escape, but the monster finds them, so Jinlin pushes Rent aside to save him and is attacked by the wolf. As she's injured, she weakly tells Rent to grow stronger, and just as the monster was about to attack again, an adventurer suddenly appeared and drove the wolf away. Stunned, Rent angrily blames the adventurer for arriving too late, so the adventurer apologizes and admits this is his fault. The man helped carry the bodies back to the village, and Rent asked the man, Wilfried, how he could become an adventurer, so the man advised him to study and train for 10 years before taking the qualifying test and tells Rent to come see him when he becomes an adventurer, so Rent smilingly agreed. Presently, Rent drinks the vampire blood and initially feels fine, but he suddenly collapses. As Rent is inwardly struggling, Lorraine smilingly reminds him of what his goal is and tells him to come back. Several hours later, Rent wakes up and Lorraine tells him that he has successfully evolved into a vampire. He realizes he can grow wings now and looks human again, so Lorraine smilingly welcomes him home. Later, as they're collecting flowers, Rent mutters that he could go out to find Wilfried now. Lorraine smilingly tells him to go ahead and says she wouldn't mind going with him too, so he says he's glad to hear it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.